Twilight Gets a Puppy. By TDR. Chapter 4. Barking all the time. Bork 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 bork. Cadence looked down at the grey-furred canine bouncing around her hooves, barking at her as she attempted to heat up the dinner that was left for them on the stove. Spike was already making a mess in his mashed carrot and ruby dinner. At least that was expected of a baby. What is he doing? Cadence asked as she looked over at Twilight. The filly didn't respond for a moment as she had her face buried in a book, though at least she was at the table finally and out of the dragon costume. Cadence had far less luck getting all the tinfoil off Ross, though his bouncing and barking had shed most of it all over the floor at this point. He is attempting to do you a frighten. Twilight responded. What? One of my books has pictures of dogs and cats with silly captions of what the animals are supposed to be saying. It's funny, but Ross doesn't talk that way. Twilight explained before burying her nose back in her book. Cadence considered that bit of information for a moment before letting it go. Aunt Celestia had told her that the pair were connected magically somehow. Well, can you let him know that I'm not going to hurt anyone and he doesn't need to bark at me so much? Cadence sighed. He knows. He just wants Miss Peace Lily back. He liked her. She tasted like cats. Twilight offered, sticking her tongue out at the mental image. Cadence regarded Ross as he continued to act like a wind-up toy, bouncing about and barking each time he landed. She had never seen a diamond dog like this one, and the glowing points of his ears and tail were a bit unnerving for some reason. As was the mass of sharp teeth he had, so far at least he had not done anything but be noisy. The pink alicorn sighed and moved over to the refrigerator and pulled an unopened container marked Ross's food out, setting it on the counter as she set another pot out to heat it up with. This of course immediately drew the pup's attention, and he sat perfectly still, his tail wagging hard enough that it slid his butt against the floor as he stared up at Cadence as she warmed the odd-looking mess on the stove, wincing at the scent. What is this? Blat. Cadence grumbled. Chicken, I think. Twilight stated from behind her book. Ew. Cadence winced. How could anyone eat this? Ponies can eat meat. There are a number of stories where survival depended on it. Still, with the designs of our molars and how our digestive tracts work, it's not the best thing for us, but those who develop a taste for it can eventually get used to it. It does contain a number of nutrients like vitamins A, B, D and K, as well as copper, chromium, folic acid, iron, magnesium, potassium, selenium, and zinc. Twilight explained. And that's just red meat. Fish and chicken have a whole differing sort of nutritional spread. From my understanding, fish has a very salty taste, which a number of ponies like. Cadence had been staring at Twilight as she listed off this rather macabre bit of information. Ross meanwhile had been jumping up and down again and was getting more and more annoyed that the new sitter was just holding his dish of food in her magic just out of his reach. As such, he started jumping up even harder, his teeth snapping at the hovering dish at the arc of each jump. When that failed, he started making grabbing motions with his four claws at the apex of each jump. Cadence took note of this and surprisingly just lifted the dish higher out of his reach, barely batting an eye at the gnashing teeth or waving claws of the pup. Does he eat at the table? Cadence asked. Mom's been trying to teach him to do that, but his paws are still too stubby to hold utensils and he makes a bigger mess than Spike. Twilight responded. Mom usually feeds him on the mat over there by his water bowl. She says it feels weird feeding him like an actual dog, but he doesn't seem to mind. Cadence made a note of this and set the bowl of chicken on the mat as Twilight said, only to wince as Ross flew through the air and crash-landed half in the bowl, snapping up the diced cordon bleu, slinging little bits about him as he gobbled. All right, it's time for your dinner, so put the book away and eat. Cadence stated, setting a warmed dish of vegetable spaghetti before the small purple unicorn. But I'm just getting to the good part. Twilight whined. Rule 33 of your mom's list says no books at the table. Cadence stated, tilting her head to glance at the spine of the book, her eyes narrowing. I'm sure whatever story in beginning thermodynamics can wait until later. Your pasta is getting cold now. Asterisk. Dinner was surprisingly quick. Ross nearly choked twice with the way he wolfed down his food, his head and paws getting coated in the foul-smelling stuff. Twilight ate quickly as well, though that was clearly because she wanted to get back to her book. Granted, the way she slurped up the pasta left that side of the table splattered in sauce and the red mess speckled the purple filly. Cadence was quite glad she had pulled the book away, as it would have been covered with pasta sauce. Or maybe leaving it close would have made her eat more carefully. The pink mare briefly wondered if Twilight had been picking up some manners from Ross. Of the three of them, Spike was the cleanest eater, and the baby dragon mashed anything put in front of him to paste before licking it off his claws. Spike finished first and Cadence picked him up, carrying him to the sink as he burped, making sure to aim him away from her while the other two continued to eat. She ran some warm water in the sink as she plugged it, leaving a little bit of water for Spike to play in as she ran water in the other side of the sink and picked up the cleaning supplies she had brought down to start washing the baby dragon. The little lizard splashed in the water and giggled like crazy, only fighting as Cadence used her rag to wipe off his face, and that protest was cut short as Cadence used her magic to make a few bubbles in the soap float around him. This was more than enough distraction for the baby, and he spent the rest of the bath cooing, giggling, and swatting at bubbles. "All right, let's get you dried off." Cadence smirked, pulling him out of the sink and setting him on a towel, rubbing it over his smooth scales, the purple and green seeming to shine from the washing. "Once we get you all set, we'll give your brother and sister a bath and then you can play." "What?" Cadence perked her ears as she turned back around. As she gave Spike a bath, the room had still been filled with the noise of Twilight slurping up her pasta and Ross licking the last few drips of his dinner out of his bowl, pushing it across the floor as he did so. Then it all went silent. Looking around, Cadence now saw she was alone in the room with Spike. Confused for a moment, she recalled number 56 on the list. Never say the word bath around Twilight and Ross. Crud. Cadence grumbled as Spike laughed. Asterisk. Cadence sighed as she placed Spike in a playpen in the living room with a few blocks and a couple of the shiny objects she had brought with her. Spike oddly seemed disinterested in the glass marbles, though Cadence was more concerned with finding the other two than the baby dragon not liking what she brought for him. Cadence started searching the house looking for Twilight and Ross. She first walked around downstairs. Kitchen, unused dining room/library, living room/library, downstairs bathroom/library. Sitting room/library, nightlights, sitting room, locked and dead-bolted from the outside with a note at about Twilight's eye level informing her not to try to enter or else. Heading back into the living room to check on Spike, she then headed upstairs to check those rooms. Hall/library, a guest bedroom/library, Twilight's room/library, main bathroom, parents' room, a locked room with a padlock on the outside out of a filly's reach covered in banned posters, and note like downstairs a locked study with the note as well, and a library/library. "I am sensing a trend here." Cadence grumbled, not really surprised she didn't find them with this light search. Clearly these two had advanced beyond a normal fool's hide and seek. "Twilight. Ross, come out, wherever you are, you can't want to stay dirty, you'll mess up any books you touch and never be able to read again," Cadence called. A gasp from downstairs put a grin on Cadence's face as she darted down into the living room. Finding it empty, she knew they were down here now. A giggle from Spike drew her attention to the baby dragon and a frown to her face. Spike sat where she had put him, still playing with blocks, though he was wearing what remained of Twilight's dinner on his head like a wig and was covered in pasta sauce. "Ooh, that's cheating." Cadence grumbled, picking up Spike again for his second bath. Asterisk. With Spike clean once again and safely placed on her back to avoid a repeat, Cadence again set out to find the pair. Figuring they had ample time to hide now, Cadence checked each room again, starting from upstairs and working down. Not finding them upstairs, she set a small alarm spell on the stairs before heading down to hunt for them again. She checked under the tables, behind the couch and in all the closets with little to no luck, though she did find another library in the hall closet. She wasn't even going to ask. As she went back into the kitchen again, she noticed something. A small saw stain on the wall in the shape of a hoof. She moved over to it, grabbing a paper towel in her spell and wiping it, seeing that it easily came off and was clearly fresh. She blinked at it curiously, wondering how it had gotten so high on the wall from such a little filly. Spike, giggling on her back, drew her attention to him as the little dragon squealed and looked up at the ceiling. Looking up herself, she saw a small purple unicorn, horn glowing, stuck to the ceiling up by the light. Traitor! Twilight hissed at Spike, only for the baby dragon to giggle even more. Cadence sighed, plucking the purple unicorn from the ceiling with her magic, disrupting the spider climb spell the filly was performing and holding the flailing spaghetti-covered filly in the air. "Save me, Ross!" Twilight called. Woof, came a hollow-sounding reply. "What do you mean, no?" Twilight flailed. "Woof!" Ross responded. "And I done want a bath either, but I got caught and I'm not gonna go alone." "Grr! Don't you take that tone with me!" Twilight whined. Cadence in the meantime had been listening to the barks and had made her way over to the refrigerator. Opening it showed nothing but food, so she looked under it, nothing, and then moved to lean over the counter to look behind it. Wedged between the wall and the back of the fridge was a very flat-looking puppy who was covered in months of accumulated dust that had gathered in the hard-to-clean place, as well as the food he had eaten earlier. Amber eyes met her pink ones and Ross smiled sheepishly, wagging his tail a little before Cadence grabbed him in her magic by the scruff of the neck, pulling him out of his hiding spot. "You can't blame me for turning you in, she found you herself," Twilight chided. "Woof! I didn't make you keep talking." The dust and food-covered Moondog whined as he was held in the air. Twilight floated there in the pink glow, pouting. Cadence grumbled at the pair under her breath. And Spike giggled like mad from Cadence's back at his family members floating above him. Asterisk. Spike sat on the floor of the bathroom as Cadence worked the shampoo into Twilight's mane. "Close your eyes now, you don't want to get soap in them," Cadence muttered to the still pouting Twilight. "I done wanna, my eye, I'm being killed," Twilight cried out, flailing, splashing water all over Cadence. Not that it mattered much to the already soaked alicorn. The canine currently sulking on the other side of the tub was the cause of most of it. You would think he was a cat with the way he flailed and flipped the moment a paw even touched the water. Cadence had to refill the tub twice just from his thrashing about emptying it, and then a third time as the water turned grey from all the dust his fur had collected behind the fridge. This of course meant that she had used just about every towel in the bathroom just to deal with all the water on the floor. Twilight had been a little better. The purple unicorn was 7 and clearly should have known better, though as Cadence moved to set her in the tub, the gifted unicorn filly had gathered all the water up in her magic and moved it out of her way so she wouldn't get wet. Several attempts by Cadence to dunk the mare were foiled as the water always wound up where Twilight wasn't. Before Cadence could do anything, however, Ross solved the problem by slapping his wet tail against Twilight's face, disrupting her spell and causing all the water in the tub to slosh back and soak the filly. Cadence again was drenched by it too, but she had given up knowing what dry was. At least for the moment, the baths looked like they would be done soon. Author's note. Another chapter done, one more of the Cadence arc. I went back to my usual writing, and before I post chapter 6 I will likely go back and fix the first part of the foal sitting arc. The only thing bugging me is the amount of downvotes I've gotten. Not that I got them, mind you, but that I have no idea what people didn't like from the story. Hard to improve if you don't know what was wrong. End author's note. End chapter 4. Barking all the time.